What is happening, everybody? It is Cooper. Welcome to Cooperville Podcast is proudly brought to you by my friends over at Midwest Meals. Check out MidwestMeals.com. I've been enjoying these for several days now. What did we have last night? We had garlic chicken, then I had like an Angus burger. Healthy meals, ready to eat, in the microwave, boom, and done. And they got all the important information right there. If you're counting your protein, if you're counting your calories, if you're counting your carbs, if you're counting your macros, all that stuff is right there on the package. Go to MidwestMeals.com, check out their vast inventory of rotating meals, create your own, and at checkout, use the promo code Cooper and receive 10% off your initial order. So first-time buyers, 10% off that first order. The podcast is also brought to you by Monster Energy. Had the monster truck in my driveway the other day. The most disappointed person in the world was my son, who I showed pictures to after he got home from school. I'm like, guess what was at our house today? He'll get over it. It's fine. Ultra Sunrise, that's how I start my day. Monster Hydro, that's how you stay hydrated, keep your energy, keep your concentration. Find it at a store near you. And of course, follow Monster Energy on all their social profiles. And last, but most certainly not least, Violent Gentleman Hockey Club, violentgentleman.com. Check out their website of awesome clothing. It's getting to be hoodie season, and man, their hoodies are just, they're the best. If you like your clothing with a little bit of attitude, Violent Gentleman is the place for you to shop. Online, violentgentleman.com. Really stoked for this week's episode of the podcast. My longtime friend, haven't had a chance to catch up with him in almost a decade, it seems like. Maybe here and there on social media, but it's been a minute. Entrepreneur, fitness trainer, personal development trainer. The dude just does it all. I don't even hold the fact that he's a Dallas Cowboys fan against him. I will let you know this. We drop a lot of hard truth in this episode of the podcast. Jimmy Hayes Nelson, my guest on the Welcome to Cooperville podcast. It starts right now.
Welcome to Cooperville.
Do you know what's fun to do in Cooperville? Pack up your shit and get the fuck out!
Listen. www.welcometocooperville.com. Who the fuck says www anymore? I can't even say it. www. Stop that. The Welcome to Cooperville podcast. On demand anywhere quality podcasts are available. And some places where cheap podcasts are available.
At the local gas station has some.
Subscribe, get updates, feel better about your life. Welcome to Cooperville.com. Check one.
Welcome to Cooperville! Make sure you use a coaster. The wife gets upset when we leave rings on the tables.
Coach Jimmy.
What's up?
Jimmy Hayes Nelson, my man, is on the podcast, and I'm excited to have you. Thank you, sir. How are you?
I am stoked, man. It's been way too long since you and I have got a chance to chat, so I think that's going to make for a lot of good content because we only have like a decade worth of things to catch up on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can cover 10 years in the next at least 6 months. I think
exactly. This may be a multi-parter. It'll be a series maybe.
We could start our own. We could start our own segment and
exactly
run that. Jimmy Nelson and I, we connected working out finally. I got to an age, and we can talk more about this later on in the podcast, but like throughout my whole entire like 20s, I could eat what I wanted to eat, and like nothing really affected me, you know.
Right.
In early 20s, I could drink what I wanted to drink, and I could eat what I wanted to eat, and the next day could function. And I noticed that I was like always at a like waistline of 32.
Right.
And then like 29 hit, and actually I shouldn't say that. I should say 27 hit, or 28 hit, and my wife got pregnant, and then I noticed that the jean sizes started to escalate a little bit. But Jimmy and I connected because when I was noticing that, I wanted to reach out for some inspiration. I know you were a huge part of Beachbody, and you did a lot of stuff with not only the man, the myth, the legend, Sean T, but the other man, myth, and legend, Tony Horton, who I still use Tony's quotes like in like random conversations, and people
right. I think they, for me, it was personal development before I knew what personal development was.
Yeah.
You know, and Tony was one of those things. And it's funny, you talk about, and I don't know, we'll just jump in here and we'll see where this goes with this. But it's so funny because you talk about, hey, 27 happened, 28 happened, 29 happened. And I find that people, that I work with on the fitness side, those of you that were blessed with good genes, that grew up being able to eat and drink whatever, sometimes that's harder because you grew up creating habits where there was no detrimental consequences to your actions, because you're like, oh, I'm invincible, and for people that don't know me, I grew up a heavy kid, grew up in West Texas, part of a broken family. And I think part of that weight gain, I was like a skinny kid until I was about 6. And then somewhere around 7, 8 years old, going into first grade, I put on quite a bit of weight. And I really do feel like a lot of that had to do with, the drama that was going on, feeling a bit pulled between two families and stuff. And, back then, we're talking, early mid 80s, if I guess since we're going to talk about age a little later, there wasn't this childhood obesity epidemic. I was the fat kid in class. And what I found really interesting is, as I've continued now, I turned 42 at the end of the year, and in the best shape of my life now is that if I never know what my plateau is, right? I don't know what I'm capable of, but so many people like yourself are trying to recapture something they had before. Like, we all have those buddies that peaked in high school or maybe at college, and then they spend the rest of their life trying to recapture what they had when they could do whatever they want to. So yeah, absolutely. I think your story is most people's story of, hey, I could do whatever and I didn't have any consequence. And now it's, I'm getting to late 20s, 30s. I'm getting married. I'm having kids. Oh, here comes 40. How do I recapture that youth and that energy?
Yeah, that was a big, and I think that hits the nail right on the head there. Is I was an athlete in high school.
Yeah.
I played all the sports. I played football, I played basketball, I played, during the summer. I wasn't really a baseball kid, but, I was on softball leagues through a church. So I was always active.
Sure.
And even when I got into my 20s and things like that, there was never that, like you said, the detriment to the previous day's actions. We could go out and, grab a burger here, and then you go out for a couple of drinks. Then like, after you have a couple of drinks, you're like, man, I'm really hungry, and it's 2:00 in the morning, and then you're obviously not going. What sounds really good right now is a salad. And,
right. I'll have my shake now.
Yeah, I'm gonna go grab let's go grab some grilled chicken while we're here, and a couple of avocados. But there was never any fall off. I still wanted to be. I think when you're in that 20s thing, if you're still driven for most of it physical appeal, to have, a 6-pack abs, or to have, have some guns showing when you wear a tank top, but then when you kind of get comfortable in life, and you mentioned marriage, and you mentioned having kids, and, when my wife and I were, first got together, we were still very active. I mean, we're mid to late 20s, vibrant, active, going and doing stuff.
Yeah.
And then we had our child who we're not blaming him. So if he ever listens to this podcast,
right,
it's not
You're
your
a blessing.
fault.
It's not your fault.
Blessing, not a curse. But you kind of, like I said, I put on more weight than she did during her pregnancy.
That sympathy weight, I see it all the time.
And it was so easy though, because I'm like, well, she's like totally cool with us stopping at 6 fast food restaurants on the way from work to home. So I'm just gonna. And it was weird because we used to do that. Like, seriously, we would go like, oh, I'm in the mood for, chicken wings, and I'm in the mood for a burger, and I want a shake from. So but we would feel bad about going to another drive-through, so we would like hide the bags and the cups from other restaurants and be like, no, we're just we're here. This is our only stop besides the 4 we just made here.
It was like the equivalent of when the fair comes to town here in Dallas. Like, everybody always talks about what are all the foods. You have your tickets, and you're going from the funnel cake line to then there's the corn dog, and then there's always some new, a fried Oreo dipped in marshmallow fluff with sprinkles and chocolate on top. It's like, how many ways can we kill you with one thing? But absolutely. And it's really interesting is, regardless, that person that's listening, if, maybe they're not married or they don't have the kid yet, but I feel like all of us get into seasons of our life, right? And right before we popped on, you asked how my day was, and I said it's been really busy, but I like this because I get in a flow. And I think that's exact same thing in just life in general. We talk about personal development a little bit, is your mindset, your momentum in things. And so we are just the accumulation of the habits that we formed. And I'm a perfect example. My background is a former 100-pound overweight 3-time college dropout who had a tendency to quit everything growing up, right? And so I look at this version of me now, as nearly, 42 years old. I've been a business owner and an entrepreneur for 12 years now. I wake up on my own before 5 a.m. in the mornings, and I have a whole morning routine that I really live by. But, and so, I study this all the time. I'm like, how did I get from one to the other?
Right.
And it wasn't this, I think so many people want this big, giant overnight shift. They're like, they either hit a birthday or they wait until New Year's and they're like, this is it, I'm going to do it. And they put all this pressure on themselves to make this seismic, 180 all or nothing shift. Right. And as I've studied myself over the past decade, whether it was fitness or finances or business, there wasn't that big, moment where everything clicked. It really was. There was a pain point that was big enough that I was like, something's got to change, right? So there was kind of an enough is enough moment. And I share a story about, I was living in Orlando and I'd been working at Disney World for a couple of years. I'd dropped out of college twice by this point. I'd gone, tried to do some things, ran out of money. And my solution to life when things got hard growing up and in my early 20s was to just flip and move, pick up and physically, from Dallas to Oklahoma to Orlando. And I remember my mom calling, and I'm 22 maybe. And all the maxed out credit card stuff is coming to the house there. And so they know my financial situation and they know things aren't good. And literally I'm trying to go back to school in Orlando, and my apartment is all that's in it. I have a mattress on the floor and a TV, and I'm living off a box of Minute Rice. And I really wish I was exaggerating that. It sounds something of a bad TV movie, but it was legit. And I moved home. She was like, we're worried about you. And my stomach dropped because I knew she was right. But I had this moment, I started working on a bar in Dallas. Initially, I was trying to pursue an acting career that wasn't going very well. And I remember coming out of the shower and just kind of looking at myself in the mirror one morning, which being 100 pounds overweight, I try not to hang out in front of the mirror a whole lot. But this is going to sound dramatic, but I had this moment and I looked in the mirror and I was like, who's going to love this?
Right.
You're going to be, this is it, Jimmy. Yo, Nelson, if you want to live with your parents the rest of your life and be by yourself, and this is it. And that was kind of that enough is enough moment, which I think is important for people. And you probably had that, before you reached out to me with the weight part. But I think what people don't get is the heavens don't open up then. It isn't like I woke up every day after that day, motivated and having this. I think motivation is this weird word people use. And I think they use it incorrectly. Motivation to me is just a feeling. Right. And I really do feel like most people are waiting for motivation to move. Where what I have found is if you move, motivation is the reward for you doing the stuff you keep saying you want to do, but you don't. And that could be anywhere from, like you said, changing in eating habits and fitness to you keep telling yourself that you hate this job that you're in, but it's not terrible, but it's not great. It's not what I want to do. But you never, you don't go do the research. You don't go find the other thing. You look at other people making money online, or whatever that happens to be. You want to travel more. And, you had that enough is enough moment. And I think the one thing that moment did for me is it just opened me up to start the journey. Nothing changed overnight. The weight didn't drop off overnight. A business didn't start overnight. But at least I was open to maybe some things I probably was closed-minded to before.
There's a lot to be said about comfort levels. And I think a lot of people, myself included, and the motivational part of it ties in because you get into a lifestyle, an environment, a career, pant size.
Right.
It's comfortable. If you're on a budget for your food for the week, it's sure a hell of a lot cheaper to eat things that are bad for you than it is to kind of formulate
absolutely
a diet that's a little more cohesive to being healthy. And maybe that's not necessarily about a bunch of weight loss, but it's about just being healthier and feeling better. But comfort is, and I think, a society-wide issue that leads into that funnels down into so many other things. That funnels down into obesity. It funnels down into financial despair. It funnels down into people kind of losing their mind over things because you just kind of go through the days being comfortable. And when you reach a something that makes you uncomfortable, or you maybe you gravitate towards something that you're not really good at, and you're like, ooh, that hurts. It's like getting to that, that 25th push-up when you've only been able to do 24, and you're like, nope, this is where my body says I can't do anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And we as humans have become kind of this accustomed to be just, if you're comfortable and you're happy, it's going to be fine. And a lot of that kind of closes the curtain on some deep-seated things that need to be worked on, because nobody wants to play outside of the comfort zone.
No, in that comfort zone, that's it. And and you hear this all the time. I just want to be happy, which I'm like, great, but what is that? Like, if you're just settling, and I get this because I did for so long. If you're just settling and you're like, look, it's not terrible. There's a great story. So one of my favorite personal development motivational speakers is Les Brown. And he shares this story about this old man that was sitting on a porch. And he's sitting on a porch, and he has a dog sitting next to him. And this young kid comes by, and the dog sitting next to the old man is moaning and groaning, just making a bunch of noise. And the kid stops, and he's like, hey, mister, why is your dog moaning and groaning so much? He's like, oh, it's because he's sitting on a nail. And the kid goes, well, why doesn't he move? He's like, oh, it doesn't hurt enough to move. It just hurts enough for him to moan and groan. And I think that's where most people in society are. It's easy to complain. And you know why it's easy? Because you will always find somebody that's willing to do it with you. We're all willing to just, and maybe you don't even label it as complaining. You're like, well, I'm just stating how things are. But if it's something you could take some action on and potentially do something different, and you're absolutely right with the push-up analogy, is that first step out of your comfort zone. It's scary. It's going to hurt. You're going to be bad. But I just think somewhere along the way, we got to watching YouTube videos, and we think like success and motivation is this magic thing that's just going to show up someday, that like motivation Santa Claus is going to come down the chimney and leave us this gift. And it simply doesn't work that way. It's Zig Ziglar used to talk about, it's like looking at a fireplace and say, hey, you produce heat, and then I'll add wood.
Right.
It really doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I just got done actually probably fifth or sixth time through listening to the David Goggins book. And he says something very similar to that, is motivation is just kindling. It kind of, it's the sticks rubbing together, it warms you up. But if you don't do anything with that motivation, you're not like, wow, I'm really motivated to go out and do a run this morning. I may only be able to run from here to the end of the block, but I'm motivated to go and do it. And you get to the end of the block, and you're like, well, that kindling isn't still burning. It has to be something that may get you up and out of the door, but it has to come from within your own self and your own mind, which is a really difficult thing to conquer, because there are so many avenues to get out of it.
Right. And I'm going to add on top of that is I look at motivation as a gift from like the universe or God or whatever. It is that feeling. So you better move and take action. So if you, like in your scenario right there, if you're like, hey, I feel pretty motivated, so I'm going to get out and run. Most people don't even do that.
Right.
They feel that motivation thing, and they're like, oh, I'm motivated. So let's say it's 2:00 on a Monday afternoon and I'm motivated. You're like, okay, that means I'm going to work out tomorrow. I'm like, no, do something at 2:00 on Monday. Even if you're like, well, I'm at work or whatever, like if you can drop and do some push-ups or whatever. I always go back to a fitness analogy, because I feel like fitness is a great analogy for like life. But for whatever that is, if it's, hey, I'm going to finally buy that online course, or I'm going to go to that event, or I'm going to ask out that girl. I don't know what that thing is that the person that's listening to this is stuck on, but I'm going to challenge them to say, the next time there's even a hint of motivation, ask yourself, what can I do right? Because it really is a gift. Now, if we want long-term success, then it's how do I take the actions that I started when I felt motivated and continue to do those on those mornings that I don't. And really, when I look at any long-term change in my life, because the things I'm most proud of, losing 100 pounds, awesome. Keeping it off for over 12 years, different. Lots of people have lost 100 pounds over and over, or 20, or the number's irrelevant. I'm interested in working with people, and we're talking long-term success, the people that I've been able to coach in online businesses. It's like, cool, don't be a one-hit wonder. Like we all know that band that like they came up so fast, right? That there was something maybe they hit with that first single. And I'm like, cool, can you hang around when the next one doesn't hit and you fight through, and stick around? And so those early struggles are just prepping us for long-term success, right? Like you got to be able to fight through those early on.
Yeah, I think creating those kind of habits, and there's, I'm sure there's math out there that's like, well, if you do something 26 days in a row, it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
But even at day 24 and day 25, that is still not quite ingrained, and even past, I think, day 26, because as soon as you get to that point, you think it's a habit, and then you start thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're like, that date, I did 26, I'm good, so I'm going to take 27 off.
Yeah.
I think we look at a lot of, and I don't know if any of these shows are really on anymore, but they have brought to kind of mainstream this rapid weight loss thing. These people that are, obese and severely unhealthy. And I think for that to be brought to kind of the mainstream front was a good thing. But when you have dramatic weight loss like that, the stories that don't get followed up on 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, because it's not easy.
Mm-mm.
But when you have a dietitian and you have a regimen and you have trainers and you have all of these things at your access, which are a challenge to come across as just Joe Schmo sitting on the couch.
Right.
You have all these things, and as a viewer, you witness all these things, and maybe that motivates you to do something, but it doesn't show you that this is not a 26-week TV series that ends and everybody goes, "Look at me, I won," or even if you didn't win, you still had some sort of transformation. After the cameras are off, after the lights go off, that is when the true test of having a healthy lifestyle and remaining in. Because I want to just circle back to something that you mentioned about it's not all about fitness, but I do think that the fitness part of it and the health part of it is all kind of tied together, because I think
I absolutely agree.
If you feel good about yourself, if you even if you don't want to stand and look in the mirror and be like, "Oh my gosh, hey, I got this going on," but if you take, you're on a 90-day course, or you're on a, something, you hit a milestone, you hit a step on your journey.
Yep.
And you feel success and you feel confident, and you look back at all the stuff that you did in that time frame, you start to build that confidence, and you start to maybe be able to do things you didn't want to do. That confidence could lead into taking a step into a career that you wanted to try, or a hobby you wanted to pick up on, but you didn't have that confidence in it. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it starts at that first step of, I need to do something about how I eat and how I feel. And if you find that the motivation to help you stand up, and then the fire starts to burn within you to keep on going, the fitness part tracks you into a bunch of different successful areas.
Absolutely. If there's, somebody's listening to this right now and they're stuck in any area of their life, right? Like financially they're stuck, or they're just not where they want to be in life. The first thing I will tell them is, go follow a fitness regimen, like follow a 90-day program, like you did, reach out to me. Maybe it was something like a P90X or Insanity, or, the programs that I coach people through. But maybe it's training for that half marathon. Maybe it's doing something like a CrossFit Open or a Tough Mudder, because I'm telling you, the things that are going to be required of you to commit to that fitness program is going to translate in your life in other areas. Right. And I have a lot of guys here in Dallas that are entrepreneurs that have their own either social media companies, or some are in the spirits and whiskey industry, and some are in real estate. And we always come back together. And I don't always get the needle to move with them a lot when it just comes to weight loss. And people don't realize, we as guys, we can be just as vain as anybody else, and we want to look good and feel good. But when I start talking to them about how you want to increase your net worth, you want to increase the legacy you're building, and whatever this, because so many of them are sacrificing their health in the name of hustle, because they're working their ass off trying to get this business, which I respect. I get that. And so the first thing to go is, man, I just don't have time to work out, because I got these meetings, I got to get this thing up. And what I passionately get across to them is, if you will start investing in your health, or take some tips off of my morning routine, I was like, you're going to show up better in those meetings. More people are going to want to do business with you. You're going to have a bigger impact on your clients, or whatever that is. And it all ties together. And so I'm really big about fitness, both fitness physically and with the personal development, the mindset thing. Not just for us, the aesthetics are great, but like really how you can show up more powerfully in life, absolutely, I think starts with moving your body. Yeah,
and morning routines, I think, the challenge is, and I mentioned this on a previous podcast I had with another young entrepreneur who's big into the health and fitness industry, is 95% of that, and this is my numbers, and I'm not a math guy, so take it for what it's worth. But 95% of that morning routine, and I think it starts with setting a time. Set a time that you're like, here are the things that I want to get done before I need to get up and start the things that need to be done for the rest of my day, when I need to be showered and ready to go to work or ready to take the kids to school. 95% of that comes in the split second your alarm goes off.
Absolutely.
And whatever tone you have or song or whatever. The fight is 5% of your brain saying, let's get after this. It's go time. Let's do it. And 95% of your brain says, no, sir. Mm-hmm. Have you felt this pillow? You spent $20 on this pillow, or you spent $50. These sheets are amazing. What's the thread count here? I'm not moving. I'm staying right here. It's warm. I'm comfortable. The blood is just, your resting heart rate is just like. But if you can push past that 95% with the 5% that's getting you motivated, and whatever it is that you want to do, you set your morning routine. Mine personally is I get up and I have a cup of coffee. I come down to our basement where my studio is. I meditate and I start to stretch and I get warmed up and I go running. And some days I come back and I'll do some other stuff. I'll throw in maybe not insanity after I run a long distance, because I am somewhat sane.
Yeah.
But I, and then I shower and I'm ready to go. And by the time I get upstairs, that's when my kid's getting up, my wife's getting up, and whatever else comes the rest of the day. And I think this is the thing that a lot of people miss out on, and including people who are in their own industry, who are their own boss, is once you have all that stuff done and out of the way, if you go through a 5-mile run, or you do even a couple miles and you lift and you just feel good and you sweated it out and you showered it off and you're all cleaned up. A lot of the times the most challenging part of your day is already behind you. Whatever is coming up, you're like, this phone call is going to suck. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to do this at my job. But guess what? This is going to feel a lot better than that last half a mile I ran this morning.
I agree. And specifically people that work with, like, let's say you have employees or clients or people that you're kind of serving or having to pour into. I always look at it this way is, man, if I haven't done anything to fill my bucket yet, I have nothing to pour into anybody else. Right. So if I wake up first thing in the morning and I'm checking my phone or I'm looking at emails and I'm starting my day on defense, like, I've already lost. And I get pushback from people all the time, like, man, Jimmy, I'd just rather would work out in the evenings, or I'd rather do things at night. And I get that. And I get that but you're talking to somebody who was like the ultimate night owl. The fact that, I was in theater, I used to work on TV shows, I was bartender. Like, my days used to end at 4 a.m. and I wouldn't roll out of bed until noon. If I can change my body clock, anybody can. And it just had to become something that was important enough. And you talk about it's funny, people look at me and go, okay, Jimmy, you have this down to clockwork, but I have those exact same conversations in my head. Right. And so, I talk about this. I have an ebook that I talk about my morning routine. And for me, I talk about having to attack my mind before my mind attacks me. 12 years into this, I still have that chatter in my head the minute I wake up. And so my combat to that is literally I reach over and grab my phone first thing. And, you can go to listen to a podcast like yours or some audio. I tend to grab, it's funny that I grab YouTube because I'm not watching the video necessarily, but YouTube have these great, and now they're like on my homepage, like they know this is what I pull up. And it's usually these epic things that are like some montage of motivational talks. Right. There's some things with David Goggins or Gary Vaynerchuk or Tony Robbins or Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn or, name your person, usually with some kind of epic music in the background. And I literally push play on that as I'm like getting up, stumbling to the bathroom. I don't know my name yet because what I realized is there was probably about 10 to 20 hidden minutes there of me just being up that my mind can remind me how tired I am, how much sleep I didn't get last night, what I have to do during the day. And I just needed something else speaking some life into me first thing, it's almost like your own hype video, and for me, that workout's coming. And so for me, just to be able to like get up, go to the bathroom, put on workout clothes, go downstairs, make my pre-workout, like there's a good 20, 30 minute chunk there that there was an opportunity to just be very self-defeating. And so for me, just having something even passively, like I'm not taking notes on it. Right. It's not, like I said, even if it's YouTube, 9 times out of 10, I'm not even looking at my phone, but hearing this stuff, it helps because then you remember, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. This is a cause that's bigger than myself. And then it is easier to get into 5:30, 6 a.m. workout or run or whatever you're doing.
The biggest detriment to having that morning routine is notifications.
Yeah.
Your alarm may go off. You fought that 95% and you got up and you're moving and you're going to make pre or you're going to make a cup of coffee. Your blood's flowing. And then you look at your phone and you're like, oh, somebody commented on a photo. If you're a business owner, especially, if you have a social media presence, that's your brand, that's your face, that's your logo, that's your emblem. And you're like, ooh, somebody sent me a DM on Insta. Maybe, I've been trying to get Jimmy Hayes Nelson on my podcast. Maybe, he was up late night and he's like, yeah, let's finally do it.
Yep.
And you look at it and you kind of slowly, as your brain fog is starting to lift a little bit, you read it and you don't comprehend it, but then all of a sudden you hit the homepage on Instagram and your thumb starts moving a little bit.
You're gone, dude.
And you are so far down that rabbit hole that you're like, and then maybe if you're lucky, and maybe I should recommend people do this. Go find somebody who posts a lot of motivational stuff on their page, because maybe you'll hit that and you'll stop and go, oh, that's right. That's why I'm awake right now. But then don't make the mistake of going, oh, look, there's a little red dot above Facebook. Oh, man. Once you kind of fall down that, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I'll fess up and say I've had mornings where I felt good. I got up and I'm like, ooh, boom, somebody hit me on Insta. And I'm like, I better, or somebody commented on a photo we put up. And all of a sudden the rabbit hole comes and you're like, time travel. I just invented time travel. I went from 4
Where did that hour just go?
It's gone. And a lot of the times when you're feeding whatever it is that you follow on whatever social media platform you go on, or maybe you end up on all of them, whether you follow stuff or not, something negative is going to end up in the back of your brain. And you may not even realize it. You may be like, oh, and scroll. But all of a sudden that, the person that's on there that really likes to either share too much information or be really vague about stuff, or is always kind of complaining about their plot in life, you may not know that it affects you, but it does.
Absolutely.
And that can end up really, derailing what could be a very productive morning. If you can get past the notification phase of your morning and just kind of get on with it, that can open up so many possibilities for how well your day is going to go.
And I know this is going to sound crazy to people, and they're like, oh my gosh, I could never do this, but I did it, is I don't have notifications on anything for that very reason. No notifications, and my phone is on Do Not Disturb probably most of the day. And, I make my living on social media. That's where I find that my clients, it's the people that I work with, either those people in the health and fitness industry or the entrepreneurs that I just coach as a one-on-one business coach or a storytelling coach, there was a couple things. I had to realize everything doesn't have to be answered now, which I feel as a society, it's real easy to be pushed into because everybody's looking for immediate gratification. And somewhere along the way, I had to realize if I lose a client or a customer or an opportunity because that person had to wait a couple more hours, that's okay. I think we teach people how to respect our time. And I was a real people pleaser for a long time. And I think it was really like that insecure fat kid Jimmy and me that wanted everybody just to like me. And so I was willing to kind of disrespect my own boundaries for that. But now what I do is I really kind of work in 90-minute blocks. And then I give myself that opportunity, that 20-minute like dopamine hit to whether that's answering stuff that's literally business. You get that message and you finally make that connection, or you get that brand to listen back to you. But maybe it is you just want to look at something stupid and mindless. And so it's taken a little bit of time. But for me, finally turning off especially the push notifications, like, hey, you got this. Like sometimes I'll still see the red circle on the top. But even with that, a lot of times the things that have that, I have to scroll 2 pages over. Like literally my Gmail box is like on the 3rd page of my phone.
It's hidden.
And these little things all sound so silly and stuff, but it really is because in the big scheme of things, if your mindset and your goals and what you want to do with your life is worth fighting for, then why not do everything you can to protect that energy, to protect that motivation that we're all looking for, because 99% of society and what's going on online and in the news and stuff is trying to get us to feel sorry for ourselves, to grumble, to complain. And we gotta protect ourselves to get over that.
There's a lot to be said about when we talk about notifications and you being entrepreneur, business owner, me venturing down that path for the first time in my career, because I did radio for 20 plus years. I was secure in my career from the time I was 19 until the time I was 38 at the time. So a lot of my life, I didn't worry about. That was just something. Work. I got work. Ain't no thing. But when I was let go in February, and I started, I'm like, okay, the podcast is gonna be a thing that I'm going to dive into and see where it goes. My wife said, if you don't start something that makes you talk like a lot, we're gonna have a problem, because I go to work and get all my talking out on the radio and come home and just be yes.
And then gets bombarded by you, ready to.
I have so many things that I have to say today. But if you are a young entrepreneur, or you're somebody who's not a young entrepreneur, you're just somebody who's getting into having your own brand or having your own ideas or something that you're trying to push on into a career or a lifestyle, the notifications thing, you are just chomping at the bit for it to be that one thing that you've been looking for, that sponsor or that that interview, that client that you've been hoping that one shoe is going to drop. We did this, and then this, the domino effect happened.
Yeah.
And I think that plan of that 90 minutes, and then giving yourself some time to do it, and almost scheduling that out. Almost that is a part of your
and that's
day.
Really where I was just about to go. If it's scheduled, if hey, 3 times a day, I'm going to go check on all my inboxes, because it can be like I've missed messages on places because I'm like, oh wait, where did I not check a message today? Because obviously people can text me. You and I have been talking through Instagram DM, right?
Right.
I posted a video on LinkedIn earlier today. I have 2 places on Facebook. So there really is like a list of places that I've had people go, yeah, man, I tried to get you on a show and you never got a response. And I'm like, oh man, where did I miss? But like anything else, if it's important, we schedule those things out. And knowing that sometimes that schedule becomes fluid, but we kind of put some parameters of like, okay, what needs to get done today? And part of, going back to that morning routine for me, it's that the mindset piece, doing something physical. And then I sit down, with a cup of coffee, and really I have a planner for the day, and it's a bit of gratitude things, but there's like this to-do list over here because it never fails. Some of my best ideas are, oh yeah, I got to do this. All happens in the middle of that workout because your brain's moving and stuff. And literally I will sit, and before I even get to the part where the gratitude part, I journal a bit in the morning, I get all that out of my head. I'm like, oh, right, and the podcast and this, and I need to follow up this. And I'll look at the previous day, and sometimes I don't get to everything, but at least I get it out of my head. So for me, it's like mindset, physical body, planner / journal. And the journaling portion of that, sometimes it's affirmations, and I'm really into that. Sometimes it's just getting junk out of my head. Like I literally will just stream of consciousness, get things out. There's times where I will sit down, and again, as an entrepreneur that has my hands in a few different things, I want to run 5 directions every day.
Right.
And so what I've started doing recently that I find is a very interesting exercise is I literally on a piece of paper will write, what do I want? And then, I'll start jotting some things down, and I'll say, why do I want it? Or how is my life? So like, let's say when I'm working with somebody who's trying to start a business or looking for business coaching, and I'm like, well, what do you want? You're like, well, I want to make X amount of money. Maybe it's a financial thing for them. And I'm like, great. Why do you want that? Or what do you feel? One of my favorite questions is, what do you feel like you'll be able to do then that you can't do now? And I ask that same question with somebody that wants to lose weight. Cool. What do you feel like you can do 20 pounds from now that you can't do now? What do you feel like you can do 3 clients from now because in some ways it helps you realize the things you have now that you already appreciate. But it also helps you get crystal clear on why am I chasing this? Right. Because going back to the long-term motivation things, if we don't know why we're sacrificing sleep to get up in the morning, or why we're doing this workout, or why we're grinding to try to start the podcast or the YouTube channel or the fashion brand or whatever we're doing, it's real easy to lose our way and lose motivation. And it's something, and again, I think it's fluid. I think it's something you constantly have to ask yourself, right? Because that I know, in 12 years of doing this, the seasons of my life change. So the thing that moves the needle for me changes from season to season.
When you say feelings, that is such an important tie-in, because if you can attach, before something happens, if you can attach a feeling to it, there's attaching like it'd be really cool. Like, I have a Jeep, but what I like to do is like to have it like jacked up 6 feet, and I want to have big mud tires. And well, why? Because it'd be super cool. People would be like, hey, and they'd do the Jeep wave, and it would be awesome. But if you can attach, a feeling to that or a vision to what that is. Well, I really would like to have, this Jeep this way, because I think it'd be really cool to take the doors off and me and my kid could go get dirty and get in the mud and go camping and do all these things. And when you get down to like a fitness part of it, well, how would you feel if you were able to walk here to there, or you were able to live long enough to see your grandchildren graduate? When you attach a feeling to something, that almost, we talked about motivation being kind of the kindling, and now all of a sudden you had that feeling, that emotion to it. Now you may have a little bit of kerosene to pour on to that spark to say, okay, this is going to suck. I mean, let's lay it out. I mean, a lot of the things that we were talking about today at fitness and starting your own business and all these paths you can go on in life, a lot of it is not about that journey, because you have to understand that it is going to suck. You have to understand there's going to be days where you're like, screw this, I don't want to do it. Yeah. But you want to know, I'll say this carefully, because I don't believe that there is an end. I believe that there is a place that you want to be next. I want to be financially secure and making XYZ amount by the end of 2020. Okay, now what? Yeah. You need to be able to see that there's going to be days that it's going to suck and you're going to have to push through. You're going to have to get uncomfortable. And then when you get there, you're going to go, look back, wow, I did all that. Now what's the next thing? And if you have a feeling attached to that, whew.
Yeah, and one of my favorite books is it's called The Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster by Darren Hardy. And the reason I like the book is that's exactly kind of the theme. 98% of what, he talks about Bono and Oprah, and he talks, Beyonce, blah, blah. He's like, 95% of what they do isn't fun. Like, you don't see behind the scenes. You get to see the part where they're on the TV show, where they're doing the concert, or you don't get to see the nights they're not sleeping, when they can't just get this hook right, or whatever the thing is, or like this interview or dealing with these people. And it is, and the book goes through talking about why that 2% is worth it. I will tell you, when people say, well, so what's the best, what do you like best about what you do? Or is it, was it when you earned this much, or when you lost this much weight, or whatever? I will tell you, the fact that my time is my own now, compared to when I used to have to sit in traffic an hour and a half both ways to a job that I didn't like, that I was just collecting a paycheck, I would make a terrible employee now, because getting that taste of being where I want to be, when I want to, the fact that I can do this with you at Monday at 2:30 in my home, I can't put a price tag on that. And for me, that's everything. And so those days I don't feel like it, it is whatever. And you were also, I want to circle back just a little, you were talking about, that attaching a feeling to it. There's no right or wrong answer to what motivates somebody either. Just so if I'm talking to you and I'm asking what motivates, and let's say it's something super catty. Let's say somebody's like, I just want to do this because, my ex-husband XYZ, or this person, whatever, and I want to show them that. I'm like, great, let's start there. Right. I heard a quote once says, whatever motivates. So if some person's just like, I just want to make this money, and somebody's like, oh, but you should really want to do it for the good of people. You know what? Different things move the needle for different people. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if that's what gets you to move, that motivation, whether or not we look at it as honorable, that can move. Because there's been times in my career when I wanted to do it for me. There was times I wanted to do something because I wanted to be able to bless my parents for something. There's been times that, yes, I just wanted to show that SOB, I can do this better than they can. And, different seasons in my life. And the other thing you said about no end that I think I see a lot of is one of two things happens with people. Going back to kind of the one-hit wonder thing. People either chase a goal and they hit it, and then they celebrate and exhale for too long, right? That person loses the 20 pounds. They're like, I deserve my treat myself. Hell yeah, you do. You hit your goal. But you need to set a timeline on when the next goal is. Right. Same thing financially and business. So, and then there's the flip side. There's that person that hits that goal and never acknowledges it, right? So if they hit the goal and it's the next thing and the next thing, and they never take the time to celebrate, well, that's what leads to burnout. Right. So on one hand, you have, I made it, I'm going to exhale and celebrate. And then it's hard to recapture that momentum. So you can't let it go for too long. And on the flip side, the person that never acknowledges, hey, I just did that. I'm going to pat myself on the back for a second. I'm going to take a couple days off if it's fitness, or I'm going to take a week off, or I'm going to go on vacation, or I'm going to eat burgers just this week. Awesome. Do you, but then set the next thing. And that, again, fitness being an analogy for business, life, relationships, then set the next goal. And I feel like I always need to have something I'm chasing.
One of the biggest challenges, I think, when we do find people that find a goal, and that, let's use, I'm going to run a marathon.
Sure.
I'm not, but somebody has a goal of, I don't even drive that far. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
Somebody has that goal. So whatever they found, maybe they their friends did it, or, there was a news story about, hey, we have a big marathon that's, I think, celebrating its 10th year here. That's really grown in popularity. So, and I've seen more people in my circle that are like, yeah, I'm going to run the Eau Claire Marathon next year. That's awesome. Whatever motivates you to do it. And they'll buckle down, and they will, back train, and they will do all the right things, and they will get on the diet, and they will carb load right, and they'll have all their macros figured out, and they are just in this zone because their goal is to run this marathon. It's not necessarily, it's not to win the marathon. It is, I'm going to run it. Yeah. I'm doing 26.2 miles, and obviously they probably have a personal goal that they're looking for as far as their time goes. When you get to that point, and you're going to celebrate it, there's plenty of like Mick Ultra, like all over the place.
It's always Mick Ultra.
I'm like, dude, you're at 26. You go get yourself an IPA, something like 8.2. Just get something back in your body. Get something good in there. Get something from Texas in there. You could get some Lone Star. Shiner. It'll be fine. But there's they reach that, and they're so accomplished, and they got the medal, they got the sticker on the back of the van. Man, they are just, and then that's it. That's I ran a marathon. That's awesome, man. I couldn't do it. I'd like to run, but I run for completely different reasons than to want to run 26.2 miles. No, thank you. But if there's not anything after that, it's the high school quarterback. It's the high school quarterback. It's Johnny Moxon from Varsity Blues. You're the star quarterback, and you got all this drive, and the cheerleaders love you, and then it's just done, and it's a story that you tell years down the road.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this. Most people are trying to recapture some feeling they had at one time in their life, and I feel like in some weird way, I was blessed to not know my potential. And so, I ran my first half marathon right before I turned 40. And then I started doing like private CrossFit lessons at 40. I'd never done that like at 40, and did my first CrossFit Open last year, and then just signed up for another half. It's because I'm like, it was the exact same thing the first time I went through P90X. So, I initially, losing that 100 pounds with a program like Power 90 and being introduced to Tony Horton, I was one of the first people I know that started P90X. And I was just like, I don't think I can do any of this. I couldn't do a pull-up. The yoga portion was like 90 minutes of just falling over.
And then there was PiYO X.
And then that was called barf in the corner. Literally my first day, like grab the bucket. And, but then I saw my body doing things. Losing weight was one thing. Like physically starting to look like an athlete seemed so bizarre to me because there was nobody in my history that said, this is inside of you. Mm-hmm. And I think that for everybody, just because of what you've done to this point of your life has no bearing on where you can go. And I don't even just mean that with your body. I mean that with your mind. I mean that with the type of lifestyle you can create. And I am the walking embodiment of that, because when I was a kid, anything that was hard, I used to quit as soon as it was hard. Now I lean into hard things. Mm-hmm. I go sign up for marathons. I built an online business with clients for 12 years. I did stuff, or P90X or Insanity, or like, where did that happen? And I really do think it comes back to the mindset piece it was literally being willing to transform my body by starting to get physically active. Because of that, I was introduced to personal development. Well, first through Tony Horton through a screen, right, and then Shanti. Well, then when I signed up for my business, I was introduced to actual personal development. Well, none of that would have happened had I not decided to push play or move my body first, mm-hmm. right? And then this version of me that I didn't even know existed inside of me, this guy comes to life after a while. And now I don't even recognize. There's times I have to really work to sit and think, like, how did I used to think? why was I afraid of everything? Why was I hesitant, but you just don't know what's inside of you. And I think that's exciting, because I think people, it's easy to go, well, I've always been this way my life, so therefore I'll always be this way. And it's just not true.
With all the clients you work with in different avenues, in different, whether it's fitness, whether it's, entrepreneurship, business, motivation, anything, how often do you hear the words, well, I can't do that. I can't. If you even open up the P90X booklet,
yep,
and you see Tony Horton and Drea Weber, and I can't do that. I can't.
Yeah.
You just watch the little, the hype video that they have, before the main screen comes on. You're like, yeah, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to get somebody past that point of the block in their brain? Because that's exactly what it is. You talked about unlimited potential, limitless potential. Everybody has it inside them.
Absolutely,
the blockage in the brain that we and however it came into anybody's life, whether it's your childhood, whether it's challenges you faced personally, professionally, that block comes in and it just says, I can't do that. I can't make that phone. I can't, call that potential client or call this person and say, I would like to work for you. How do you get people past that, the I can't phase of any personal development, whether it's mental or physical?
What's funny is, I'm going to go back to the fact that you're talking about Tony early and not knowing that I was doing personal development. And for anybody that's ever done P90X, one of the things that he talks about is anytime there's a can't, he always talks about, I presently struggle with, right? And I really do think it starts with just changing people's language. I have relatives that don't even realize how much they are self-defeating in their passive language. Right. And your thoughts are things, and your vocabulary, your brain and your body and the energy and the universe around you are you speak something into the world. I think people underestimate how powerful their words are and their thoughts are, that we really can speak and think things into existence. And we have to change those patterns. Tony Robbins talks about it being like grooves in a record. And you literally have to scratch over that and create new grooves. And I think that starts with our language. It starts, like I said, with the things I write in the morning. It's even if I don't completely believe it, I'm going to go. It's not fake it till you make it, but it is doing things even if I don't feel like it at the time, right? I presently struggle with. I'm getting better at. I'm learning to whatever those. Instead of saying I can't and fill in the blankets, I presently struggle to. I'm learning how to. I'm getting better at. And that may seem really childish and simple, but I think it starts there, because we don't always know that we can do it when we start. That's why it's scary, because if we knew we could do it, there would be no fear. But the fear's not going to go away. The success, the thing you want, the life you want, the body you want, the attitude, the energy is on the other side of I can't, I'm scared, what if, etc. And you just got to step into it anyway. And I think that starts with your language. I presently struggle with, but I'm going to anyway, if that makes sense.
I think we have this thing floating around between our ears called our brain, and it's an amazing tool. The things that it can do, we can't even comprehend with the brain that we have, because it's so intricate. Even just how much you see when the thoughts that go through your mind are this rapid electrical magical thing that's in your head, and we all have one. And the toughest part is reaching the understanding that you control your brain. What everybody has gone through this. You let your brain control you. You let your thoughts control how you act, how you behave, what you go to do. And when you start to kind of get some traction up there, when you start kind of, and sometimes you got to dig and claw, and it's gonna be dirty. You may have to go into places in your brain that you thought were locked in kind of a way, but once you get in there and you get filthy with the mess that's up there, and you start to realize that wait a minute, I can control this brain that controls this body that controls which direction I go.
Yeah.
In every single facet of life. how you parent, your sleeping habits, your relationships, your business, your fitness, your everything you have control over once you take control of your own brain.
Absolutely. And that's why I go back to the first, like I said earlier, the first thing every morning is I have to attack my mind before my mind attacks me. And it became, so it's that very first audio or whatever I'm listening to first thing in the morning. But then little by little, I did become obsessive about it. So it was like, where are there little pockets in the day so like if I'm taking a break and grabbing coffee, can I stick my AirPods in and just catch 5 minutes in an audiobook, some little hype video on YouTube? Can I pop in a podcast like this? When I would go grocery shopping, I'd be the guy with headphones in.
Right.
I've fallen asleep to it before. Now, I don't do this all the time, but there were seasons in my life that, again, it became important enough to me that I had to change the way I was thinking because I was so sick of where I was in life. I'm like, cool. Sometimes you have to be willing to get a little obsessive. There are times in my life, my fitness or nutrition or whatever, it's not always just balance. Like sometimes you got to lean into something a little crazy, and then you find like that middle ground in the balance later. But if you keep banging against that same glass ceiling that's limiting you to this point, you may have to just get a little crazy to break through that. Right. And yes, other people may look at you and be like, oh, they're obsessive, or, they're a little out there. But you know what? Like I had a lot of buddies that literally kicked me in the crotch when I was first trying to start my business online, because they were like, we're tired of seeing your post. I wish you'd talk about this. And all those same guys, I've known them for 20 years. None of them really got involved with me in business. And, a few months ago, we all went out here. It was in Dallas. It was Dirk Nowitzki's last home game. We all got together, and it was just this great time. And I literally had most of them unknowingly to each other pull me aside at one time during the evening and be like, hey, man, I know I gave you a lot of crap about this, but it's really awesome to watch what you do. Because because I was the one person like sharing everything on social media and stuff. And they'd be like, it's kind of your job, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no, that's pretty awesome that you've been doing this whole time. And it was just, the people that are going to roll with you are going to roll with you long term, and if they don't, maybe sometimes it's time to upgrade that circle.
Right. There's a lot to be said. And I'm glad you got into this, because there's something I did want to touch on is when you do take control of your mind, and even not fully, because I think that's an ongoing kind of a lifelong path that you have to take to be able, because you're going to have to fight it. Jimmy Hayes Nelson fights it every morning. You fight these things, but you kind of develop some calluses on your brain as I've read, to get yourself into a place where it becomes more of a routine. But you will always have, and once you get past it, you will always have people. They're not haters. I don't like necessarily using the word haters, but there are people that will question your motivation and question your obsession, and will do their best to not intentionally make you feel bad about your behavior, the things you post, the crazy routines you have. Like why do you get up before 4 a.m.? Like you should stop doing that. You need more rest in your life. And oh, gee, you're looking really skinny now. They will say a lot of things, and there's two parts to it. One part is you have to be able to shut out the noise because you are on this path yourself. The other part of it is, and I think that it kind of ties into what you're talking about with your buddies, is a lot of times it's because they're insecure about what they're not able to do.
I would literally say, you asked how life's going, and you're right. It's usually a reflection of them. Because when they, and again, making this whole thing one big circle back around to how it's easy to complain or grumble or just point out this is the way things are, because you can always find somebody to dive down that hole with you. And it's easier to do that than to say, cool, well, what can I do about it then?
Right.
And when you're taking steps to do something about it, to change your life, to change your mindset, to change your reality, to change your free time, it is a mirror on them that instead of finding somebody that's going to help justify their reasons, AKA their excuses, there's somebody actually doing something about it. And it doesn't make them feel good because they realize you're the example of what they could be doing. And yes, there's, again, going back to that Entrepreneur Roller Coaster book, there's a story in there about crabs in a crab trap. And the way it works is the crabs all can crawl in, and they literally could crawl out anytime they want to. Once they start getting a few in there, when one starts to try to crawl out, the rest of the crabs pull that one back down to the point where sometimes they'll break the arms off the crab to keep it in. And that's society. Because if you crawl out, then we are all looking at each other like, well, they got out. Why not? It's so much easier to pull you down than it is for me to actually do something about my situation that I just want to complain about all the time. And that goes back to finding circles. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if right now you're like, well, my family kind of sucks and my job kind of sucks, that also includes online.
Right.
And for me, it was plugging into, I found an online support community that became my haven. I found a group of people online that believed in me before I believed in myself. And there's way more of those and opportunities to do that now than there were 12 years ago when I started. But absolutely, like you gotta be able to fight for your mindset. You got to be able to fight for what you want to do to change and really protect that.
Jimmy, I want to wrap up on this, but we're gonna have you back on because we could like I said, this could be a 6-month thing. I mean, we could talk about your Dallas Cowboys for probably another hour here.
Oh yeah, that's its own show.
Yeah, but we won't. No, I'm kidding. It's gonna be a great year. I feel good about things in Green Bay. I'm sure after your win yesterday, you're feeling good about Dallas.
So far, so good.
Yeah. One game in, feeling like
right.
Hey,
we're all in the playoffs.
For like 3.5 days, I got to say, I don't know if you know this, but the Green Bay Packers are the best team in football.
Right, exactly.
There's no comparison, and the Bears were the worst. So always right with the world. But when you talk about that crab analogy, and I think it's a great one, getting out, and there are that group of crabs that are still down in that hole, and maybe some are trying to get out, and maybe some are just fine being on the bottom, dragging you back down. If you're that crab that gets out, one of the biggest challenges that you're going to have to face is in the back of your mind, always knowing that group of crabs is back there. And as soon as you want to fall back in, they will take you back with open crab hands.
Yeah.
and they will bring you, you'll be welcome back to the party. Hey man, we missed you. Remember when you were fun? Remember when we used to do stuff and it was great. We just sat around and did nothing. And it was awesome. That group, from whatever you're trying to crawl out of and crawl towards, there'll be several holes that you could fall easily back into with a group that are just like, you know what? You're out there, and I bet it sucks to get up early. I bet it sucks to go run. I bet it sucks to have to write something down. Don't you feel weird when you are looking in the mirror and you have all these Post-it notes all around your head and you're saying all these stupid things to yourself? Come back. We don't do none of that stuff. Come on back to the hole. It's fun down here. When you start to get towards the group of crabs that's ahead of you, and you start to kind of make pace with them, and everybody's like, hey, new guy.
Yeah.
And they're all clawing in the same direction. Maybe that's the group we need to start looking at, like, hey, this, that guy up there, how did he get that far? Let me learn something more. Let me try to, crawl a little harder to get towards where that person is. There's always somebody that, for the I can'ts and the I struggle with, and I'm going to get theirs, find people that have done it, because there are so many stories about people. I came from nothing and now I have this. Well, I can't do that. Well, clearly it can be done. Nobody can run a 4-minute mile in under 4 minutes. That will never be. It was done, and then the record was broken a couple weeks later. It can be done. Find the path. It may not be as easy for you. It may be a little easier for you than that person, but there are ways to get to whatever direction you're trying to go.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. As you start to make those moves, find those people. If you're the smartest, fittest, richest, most positive person in your group, you're in the wrong group. Right. And I never want to be the leader of everything in my circles. And so I've had to continue to seek out new circles. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. Those people that challenge me to raise my game. And the last, like as we said, wrapping this up, going into long-term success, when I found people that I was able to chase, that were willing to mentor me, and then even if I was just getting started, I was all of a sudden just a couple steps ahead of other people. And so I started mentoring others in the beginning of my weight loss, in the beginning of my, entrepreneurial journey. Even though if I wasn't making a ton of money yet, or if I hadn't lost a lot of weight, if I've lost 5 pounds or I've made $5 or, whatever analogy you want to use, well, I'm a superhero to the person on their couch that's just been thinking about trying to make $5 or lose 5 pounds. And so that combo of being taught, activating, and being willing to teach the person that's just a couple steps behind me has really what's kept me going all these years.
Coach Jimmy, he kind of covers it all. He kind of just does it all. Where can people, if they want to reach out to you for inspiration, for questions, for maybe they're looking to get off of that couch, maybe they're looking to make that career change, maybe they're looking for something to kind of clear that fog, learn about your morning routine, where can they find out all the information about you?
Absolutely. The one thing I love to give to everybody, thank you for listening, is I'd love to give you a copy of my morning routine, and you can find that at productivebook.com. Productivebook.com. It's a quick download. You can keep it on your phone. You don't have to follow exactly my morning routine, but it can give you some ideas. And then I'm the Coach Chimmy everywhere on social media. Please reach out, DM, send me a message. I answer all my own stuff. I'd be happy to help.
Jimmy, thank you so much for the time, brother, and the words. I mean, I'm moved, and I'm glad we had a chance to reconnect. And let's get you back on the next couple of weeks. There's so much where we can talk about as we get towards fall. This is, and I'm not sure if you guys have fall in Texas. It's this season where
right now it's still 100 degrees here, but I've heard of it.
Wisconsin, we don't even really call it fall. We call it could snow tomorrow month.
Pre-winter, yeah.
Yeah, we don't really know. Like the shovel, we still have a rake and a shovel, and we still have the lawnmower out. It's a weird transitional period up here. But
nice.
But understanding, and that becomes a part of it too, is understanding where you're at and the challenges you're going to face. If you want to run and be a runner, and you want to live in Wisconsin, and you don't want to run in snow, you're going to have to find some alternative ways or bundle up.
Yep.
So we have plenty more we could talk about. So let's get you back on soon.
I'd love to thank you for the time, and I would love to be on any other time.
Awesome. Jimmy, stay in touch, brother. Be well.
Will do. Thank you.